At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
It is a new day for 911 professionals. They have gone from the most important person you will never see to the most vital piece of public safety. Truth be told, they always have been. The curtain has been pulled back, and they are sharing their stories. Welcome to Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday, by Ricardo Martinez II, and narrated by myself, Ricardo Martinez II, and distributed by Beacon Audio Books. Copyright 2023. That's right, everyone. Finally, I can let everyone know the rumors are true. Imagine Listening, Your Worst Day is Our Everyday is now available as an audiobook on Audible, and it's a long time coming. Very excited. Not a lot of authors get the opportunity to voice their own book, but I had the honor and privilege to do so. So thank you to Beacon Audio Books, as well as my publisher, Titled Town Publishing, for everything, but especially all of you for making the I Am 911 movement, as well as Imagine Listening, what it is today. I appreciate you all more than you know. So go ahead, head out, stream it, download it, however you consume your audiobooks. Imagine Listening is now available. If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is going to be episode 529 of Within the Trenches, True Stories from the 911 Dispatchers Who Live Them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, a leader in next-gen core services, and a big shout-out, as always, to patrons of the podcast, Facebook subscribers, as well as on Circle. I'm going to be adding that to the Circle community here coming soon for the trenches, and a lot of stuff going on. We're already just about done with this first month of 2024. Which is crazy to think that all of this is happening and happening so fast, but that's the way it works. That's the way it goes. So again, a lot of things going on. Got a lot of great episodes coming up, as well as some appearances. I'm going to be heading out to some conferences. I'm going to be doing a lot of teaching this year. So already getting all of that stuff planned up and out, and also going to be at the Mayan Ranch that the 360 dispatcher puts on. That's Joe Serio, and I'm the closer there. I do Imagine Listening, but also with the teaching, the 8-hour classes that I'm doing, Imagine Listening is in that package as well. So this is a session that I have done at many conferences, whether it be state conferences or national conferences, and now it's going to be coming to an agency near you. So if you've never been in an Imagine Listening session, reach out to me. I'll give you the email address and everything at the end of the episode, but we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I'm excited to have my guest on today. My guest is Sondra Wesley, and she is the ECC Education Manager with Prepared. Hello.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I am well, thank you.
All right, excellent. I am so glad. And my side there, just as I was asking you that, is because I'm so happy that you're still here. Because for those watching and listening, I screwed up the time. And I'm looking, I actually I saw the email pop up and it said like declined and then accepted again. And then I saw the time and I thought, no, that cannot be right. And I looked down and I thought, oh, I hope she's still there.
I'm here. That's what we
Uh,
do. We make it work, right?
yes, that's right. And I thank you so much for that. Now you're currently in Tennessee, right? You're out at a workshop that they have.
Yes, I'm at the 911 Tennessee Winter Workshop, which has really exploded this year. So it's full of vendors and buzzing with activity. It's a nice conference right here in the Smoky Mountains here in Gatlinburg. So it's fabulous.
Oh man, excellent. I'm gonna have to head out to the next one the following year. I knew there's a lot of states that are doing different workshops and everything, and would love to go to every single one of them. But man, I don't think I have enough money to go to every single one of them.
I would recommend it. It's a good group here. You got to love Tennessee.
Perfect. Oh, and I definitely do. I've got a lot of good friends out there in Tennessee, and I've been there for their state conference as well. And just excellent people. Hospitality is the best. Always feels like family being in the area and such. So it is always good to be out there. Now, before we jump into your story and everything, what exactly are you doing out there with Prepared?
I'm going to be teaching a session with live streaming coming in, some of the assistive technology that we're doing at Prepared. So I'm going to be doing a light session with that, but I'm also working the vendor booth, kind of educating the folks that some of the new offerings that we have here, they are Prepared. Because like I said, not only we are usually thought about as the pioneers really in the live streaming space for bringing live streaming into dispatch centers, but we're moving on kind of refocusing to an assistive technology where we can let the dispatchers do more with less, I guess you could say.
Oh, and that is perfect. Now, that's one thing that, you know what? Before we fully jump into your story, I have to jump in right now to ask this question because you're working with a an industry partner that is so forward thinking and everything. The way you're saying, thinking about your time in public safety, and I usually save this question, and this is also one that I did not send you, but you have about 30 years in public safety total. So when you think about it and the stuff that you're doing now, how has the technology changed in 911 from when you started to what you're dealing with now?
Uh, well, I started back in 95.
Hmm.
And before I go too deep in traveling the timeline or something, it's just, we went back to the days of black screens with green lines on a CAD system. And even when
Yes.
I was leaving the center to take a teaching role more so, I thought I would see it in my lifetime. But I never dreamed this technology would come this quickly and how much of it is evolving so quickly for the public safety space. So it's really, I was a little conventional maybe on the way that I thought that these things would progress as we talk
Mhm.
about next gen 911 and what we thought that they would look like as we've seen them build out. And then you have fresh minds that come in who are not maybe ruled by that convention that we thought it would look like, that just comes in and says, oh, there's a problem, that's easy. And they're not pigeonholed into what we thought it would be like. So the technology is amazing. We've got how many CAD vendors in the US now? So back in the day, you had 5 or 6 and you had to choose from which of the best was the worst or whatever. So the fact that there's so much technology actually being brought into the public safety space, I welcome it because I know what it was like not having those options. So I think it's just amazing in the way the technology is growing it. But it does allow dispatchers really to just progress so much quicker with the information, because there is a lot of information coming in for the dispatch centers now, and to be able to really process that and make it useful it's a challenge that needs to be overcome. So I think that we're headed that direction.
Yeah, it's I fully agree. And just the last few years, the technology has just exploded. And you see a lot of stuff in social media and maybe even in the news and everything where and I saw something recently where someone was it was I believe it was on X, formerly Twitter, and they were commenting on something And I wanted to respond so bad. And I thought, no, don't go there because you're going to, don't do it. Don't feed into it. But what it was it was a bunch of folks actually saying, how is it that I can, get food, sent to me or whatever? Like they know the location and this and that, or, just all these types of things that we've all talked about for years. And they're saying, but 911 can't do that. Now, there was luckily someone, and I don't know that they were with public safety or not, but they said they were talking about privacy and like all this other stuff and how, in 911 it's completely different. It's the private, there's that private sector of 911, there's the public side, and then with all of these other apps, I mean, you're giving permission right when you download that app and turn it on and everything. So there's all of these different things. People are not fully aware that 911 is a different beast, and it's not as easy for 911 as it is for everything else.
True, very true. Just the governance that goes into people's privacy and giving out delicate information and stuff. Yes, it's a lot different, and it's challenges that the private sector has to kind of understand a little bit better. But most of the time, what we see is not a lot of pushback because people are calling dispatch for help. They've
Right.
called them. They didn't just randomly pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I'm calling somebody today." So it really works as a collaborative effort to resolve a situation.
And just so that you know, as you mention the black screen with the green on it and everything, when when I started dispatching, even in the second center that I was at, I started in Florida, ended up moving to Southwest Michigan, back home, and finishing off my dispatching career at the county that I grew up in. Now, this is probably about 2005 now, and the CAD system that we had was the AS 400, and it was just I mean, it was on flat panels, but it was a window that was a black screen and all green text and everything, and it was all done by codes, ORIs, incident codes, like, and you had to have all of that lined up or like it wouldn't work. You were taking me back.
And I'm telling you, and I love to go around even with the other vendors, even if I'm not looking for a CAD, I love to just go around to the other spaces and to see other technologies that's being developed and, just how quickly it is evolving. It's inspiring, it really is.
Yeah, no, it is. It definitely is. And I love it because there's so much of it, but it also makes me jealous a little bit because I'm not in dispatch anymore. So
Mhm.
I don't get to actually use it, but I love to hear about it. I love to see it. But before we get into more of that, more of what you do and what Prepare does, let's go back in time. And how did you get started in public safety to begin with?
Oh, how I got started.
The way you make this sound, they're like, "Oh, it's so far."
It was far. It's way back. Way back. We're talking in the 90s.
Mhm.
I actually dated someone who worked for the ambulance service for EMS. I thought it would be kind of fun to take an EMT course, and that kind of got the ball rolling. I ended up working in EMS, eventually went on to school for paramedic, and I did that for about 5 years, working out in the elements, lifting people heavier than me. And I would go to the dispatch center and I'd see them just, I thought, I want to do that. So about 5 years after kind of getting a little burnout in EMS, I was hired at the 911 center where I spent the majority of my career. I thought, what have I done? the first week was so bad, and it was in a time when maybe a little bit of hazing went on, not only
Mhm.
within the radio room itself, but with the field units. I'd come into a center, and maybe you all have done this. Other dispatchers in the past that went into a center where everyone was really tenured. There was a well-oiled machine, and here you've got someone that is trying, but it's just not at the level where the others was, especially since they didn't have a lot of new hires. So I was a new hire. The first year was horrible. It was horrible. I think that it takes a while to get a dispatcher comfortable, a couple years really. So the first year was very challenging for me. There was And I like to teach about that even when I do training sessions for, especially for training officers, for CTOs and so forth, just that you are that big, giant, mean dinosaur, the T-Rex in the room, and you've got someone you're just trying to get them through the training session. So, so I've lived both sides of that, really. And I think that that's something that we need to be a little conscious of better than what we are.
Now, do you feel like having that experience, those 5 years prior, also kind of prepared you in a sense, no pun intended with your
Mhm.
shirt and who you work for, but prepared you for things that you were getting into in dispatch as well?
Oh, yes. When I would come in and we'd have different consoles, and you'd work EMS with fire or the county or the city law enforcement agencies. And I always wanted to go to my safe space, and that was to go to that EMS fire console because
Mhm.
that was what I was most comfortable with. That was my skill set. So I did, and no one else wanted it. Everybody else wanted the law enforcement side. They found it to be more with more activity and stuff. So I did enjoy it. I believe that it's harder to tell somebody how to do it than to just do it yourself. So there was a big learning curve there, especially when given pre-arrival instructions. But yes, it absolutely elevated me to where I could understand in that dispatch room what they was needing. That's why I think ride-along programs are really, really important for dispatch and for the officers and field responders as well, to just get a taste a little bit of what expectation, or you can kind of be a more proactive dispatcher if you're understanding what that they're going to need, so you can make those anticipations.
I fully agree because it definitely bridges the gap, right, between all of those disciplines of public safety, as you're saying as well, for people to understand more of what it is. And the center that I was at, they were starting to do that a lot more, especially with the sheriff's department. They would have some of their newer deputies come in and just kind of chill there and watch what was going on, because before that, it was always us going out, dispatch going out and doing ride-alongs, which is always awesome, right? Sometimes nothing happens, sometimes a lot of stuff happens, and that happened to me. A lot of stuff happened on my ride-alongs, and it was a lot of fun, but it was also eye-opening, and I got a chance to understand and see what it's like when I'm in the car and calls are coming in and they're answering and responding in the way they're doing it. And we would have before they started doing it regularly rather, they would have some come in to help us. For example, we had a really bad storm once, trees, wires down. It was just going crazy in there. And there's on a weekday, we would have 3 people on for the entire county. On the weekend, it was 4, and if it was bad weather, there was 5 of us. And I'm pretty sure it was 5 of us at that time, and the deputy working the area where dispatch was and the city officer ended up coming to help us, and they stayed for maybe an hour. And by the end of that time, they were done. Like, they didn't want it anymore. They were like, "We wanna go back out and, like, help out with the trees and wires." I don't know how you guys do this, but like you said, it really does help everyone understand.
Yeah. And I think that it really does elevate your dispatching skills, because it does make you more proactive as a dispatcher, or even understand some of
Mhm.
the challenges they have. Maybe they're trying to talk loud on next to a busy freeway and you don't understand why they're screaming over sirens or something, especially for new hires. I think that it's really important.
For sure. And did you feel like, and I know you kind of mentioned this already, but coming into dispatch from being out in the field as part of EMS and everything, was there anything about dispatch that surprised you? Did you feel overwhelmed or anything when you very first started coming in for your shifts? I mean, and the reason I ask as well is because I had a coworker who ended up coming in from EMS as well, and I would hear him on the phone saying certain things, and I would go over by him, and when he was done, I would say, "Bro, like, you can't, like, that stuff you can't do. You got to go through the cards." And he goes, "Well, I know how to do this. I do it on scene." I'm like, "It's different when you're in here." Was it odd? Like I said, you kind of mentioned it already, but was there any of that part that really was like, "Oh man, this is going to be kind of difficult?"
Very much so.
Yeah.
It is a lot harder to tell someone how to do it when you just want to push them out the side and be like, "I've got this. I'm on it." But the protocols, and not only that, I really thought that the job was a lot easier until I sat down. And then
Yeah.
the multitasking skills that you have to have, and all that you develop, it's a big difference. But I think it does field responders a lot of good because they realize, okay, maybe this is a little harder than what it is. What it
Now,
looks.
was there a moment, kind of thinking back, was there a moment in the beginning where, whether it be something that happened in dispatch, incident with a coworker, or you took a phone call, or whichever, that really kind of solidified, like, I'm in the right place. Like, this is the right place. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, like I said, I had a hard time for at least the first year.
Hmm.
But I did have a call that was, I had a call from an indigent family who had a infant who was on an organ transplant list. So they had no financial resources, and they had to have an 8 hour. They had like 10 hours to get 8 hours away by flight. They had to get to Omaha from Kentucky in order to be able to receive these organs for their infant. Now, you're talking about a family who is in Section 8 housing. They have no resources. How are we getting them there? And of course, I was a junior dispatcher just a couple of years on. I thought, who are we going to call? So I started calling
Yeah.
everyone. No one was off limits. I'm sure my supervisor was about to just have a panic attack, but I was literally calling congressmen. I called the National Guard. I called everyone that I could think of that had any type of means that we could use. And I got a hold of a aero company who did a jet flight free of charge for that family, that done a medical jet flight for us. So they were able to go out there and get the transplant and stuff. But it was just a normal day. Literally, I could have probably gotten more trouble than anything for it. But the way that it got attention somehow, they've made a big media blow up out of it. And it's those random calls that we do every day that you just never know that something is overly important. It could have been any call, but it got some national attention over it. But more than that, it seemed like that was a shifting point within not only the dispatch center itself, but within the field responders. So like, okay, we see you. It kind of eased up at that point. And I thought, yeah, I made a difference today. It was good stuff. But for me, that's when I was like, okay, this is where I need to be. And just letting others see that too. It was a good shift. Yep. It came at the
Wow.
right time.
So what was that feeling like? You're already in that moment, that mindset there where I've got this, that I'm in the spot where I'm supposed to be. But also, just for, those who are, watching and listening, what was that feeling like inside?
Um, I don't know. I think that we at dispatch, we can almost accomplish anything, especially over the phone. I don't care if
Mhm.
I need a tanker full of diesel fuel, if I need a backhoe, if I've got a plane crash, we get it done, right? And then we
Mhm.
figure it out later. And I think the accomplishment that I was able to accomplish something like that, it was rewarding. And not only that, but I had a family member that lived down next to this family. So they would report back on how, as the child grew up. Now, the child eventually passed, but it was like 7 or 8 years later. But
Mhm.
they had all that extra time with their child, and they would eventually, they would, on occasion, send a card in just to let me know how it was doing. But yeah, they were, of course, remembered it very well too, and it was rewarding. We don't get a lot of rewarding moments in dispatch, maybe like you do in EMS. It feels like sometimes, but it was good.
That's awesome. That's definitely one to hang on to, right? You've got all these different calls, and I tell people all the time that if you get a chance, journal, like, write down some of those wins, because we don't always celebrate those wins, right? We don't always need a thank you, but when we hear it, it gets you, right? It kind of, almost takes your breath away sometimes, because it is a thankless job. And again, we don't always need a bunch of praise or anything, but every now and then it's pretty awesome. And if you're writing things down, or really, keeping it locked in the memory bank. When you have those hard moments, when you have those hard calls, or you're feeling like, am I in the place that I'm supposed to be? You can go back and look at those wins and remember, this is why you do what you do.
I think that's great. It's great that you say that, because even myself, when I was thinking about, you think about the calls that really linger with you, and of course,
Mhm.
I know that they're usually the traumatic ones, or the higher profile, or the really strange ones. And I think that it's rare that we do just hang on to the good ones. They're usually a traumatic event associated with it. But I think
Right.
you're right that it's important to hang on to those. You just made a difference. So yes, thank you.
Hey, no, I'm a big believer in hanging on to those because, man, it's a hard job and a hard profession, and not a lot of people understand it. And when you're getting locked down, when you're just feeling alone, it's always cool to look back at those. I mean, I have a newspaper clipping from a call that I took that had a good outcome and such, and I will always have that newspaper clipping. And even 10 years now out of dispatch, I will sometimes run across it, and I'll look at it and read it and think, I did that. Like that, we all did that, and we helped this family. Who knows where this person is now? I think the what it was, I'll just say it really quick. What it was, and this was early on. Actually, I think it was just after I was done with training at the last center that I was at, where I finished off my career. It was a mom who called, and she was very, frantic, hysterical because what was going on with her kids. It was wintertime, and the kids were all sliding down this hill. Well, they were trying to see who could get the furthest, and the youngest child won. Her little girl, the youngest won. However, she ended up going further than everybody else and onto the middle of a pond, and it was thin ice and nobody could get out there to get her. So she's calling. I'm keeping her calm. We've got everybody heading over there, and they get there. We hang up, and I'm just sitting there waiting and waiting. And I remember, I can see it like it was yesterday. I'm sitting there at my console, and I'm just looking at the screen and just saying, please, please get her, please get her. And then they finally key up over the radio and they say, we got her, we got her. And I'm like, oh, thank God. So then about a week later, my supervisor, because I wasn't a supervisor yet, but my supervisor who was there, she ends up reading it like she would do every Saturday morning. She would have the local newspaper, and she's reading something and just yells out loud, who took this call? And immediately all of us are like, nobody wants to answer. Like, we don't, because if it's in the newspaper, it's not always good, right? Uh, so that's what we were thinking, because that's usually what the media puts out there is, something that got messed up or whatever. So I said, what call was it? And she starts talking about it. And I said, that was my call. Why is it in the newspaper? And it was an ad that that the family took out to thank dispatch and all of the responders that helped save their daughter. And it was the Curtis family is what it said on there. And I still have it. That little girl is probably like in her, I don't know, mid-20s now. But I will always have that. And like you were saying, it's always good to hold on to those wins.
Do you ever think of that? Like, that was a great save that you was able to participate in. Do you ever um, think that you've done better dispatching jobs at different calls, but they never get noticed? Because we like, yeah, I did a great job on that, but I'd be like, I've done better jobs on other stuff, and then you never get, there's no big blow up over it. And you're like, I've done a really good job. So, do you ever find yourself like wondering why some of the other stuff maybe not got, that we don't hold on to some of the other stuff maybe if it
Yeah.
didn't get attention?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different calls and everything that I can remember that I took and stuff, but I never really thought about it, to be honest with you, because I was like everyone says, this is episode 529, and almost everyone that I've spoken to has always said this same thing. I was just doing my job. I was just doing what I'm there for, what I love doing. I was just doing that, and for me as well, I was doing my job. I was there, and it was definitely a difficult situation, and I'm glad that it had a good outcome. But with that one, I never expected to get a thank you, let alone an ad in the paper taken out from the family thanking anyone. So thinking about other calls and such, it's I was there doing what I love to do, and just
But you
if
gotta also celebrate those people who went extra, because a lot of times
oh,
they
for
could
sure.
just stop it and be like, "No, you took this all the way to the end," and that is to be celebrated. Because where
Yeah,
does that expectation stop of service really?
for sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the things too, even more so, not just when the family or, our callers say thank you, it's those out in the field who also recognize, and see us for what we actually do. And it's not someone who's jaded who is saying, "Oh, well, you guys just answer the phone. You're really, or you weren't on scene. So how are you feeling certain things?" And we're there thinking you have no idea. And one quick example, it was an infant death. It was an infant CPR, but the infant had already passed for a while. But I was helping the mom, and that one messed me up. And when EMS called in for their times and numbers, they ended up asking for the person who took the call. And, my partner told me they want to talk to you. It's like, oh, geez, what's going on? So I answer the phone, again, just messed up because of the call. And the person that I'm talking to, he says, "I just wanted to know that you did a good job. And when we got there, they were doing textbook CPR, and there was nothing else that you could do." And then on top of that, the sergeant who was out there ended up coming into dispatch and sat with me and asked me if I was okay. And I said, "I'm okay now that I heard that from EMS, but I'm still kind of messed up." And he goes, "What do you need?" And I said, "I need to know exactly what happened. I need that closure." And I will always be grateful for the gift of closure, because that sergeant told me every single thing that happened, but also that I had done everything in my power, that there was nothing left to chance, and that really helped me through that.
And they do say that that is two of the big things as far as with PTSD, just because I do study it quite a bit, just because of the live streaming aspect and so forth. But that is
Yeah.
a big piece of it. Did you do all that you could do? Plus, you had a traumatic incident with a child. I mean, you got, but you also got some closure because they was able to tell you the actual events that happened. So
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that sergeant ended up going on to, be a captain, and actually he's married to, um, the training coordinator there now. She's actually a person that I grew up with, which is crazy. I grew up with her, and we went to school together. She graduated a year before me, and then I we kinda lost track of each other. And then years later, we end up working together in dispatch, which was the craziest thing. I thought, What are the odds that you and I would be working together?" But, her husband, now, the sergeant, ended up being a captain. He's retired now, but when he retired, I called him up and, or sent a message, and I said, "Just thank you. I will always be grateful for that gift of closure. You have no idea, man. I really needed that." It's those
they,
things. This profession, man, I tell you. So, a lot of good things, a lot of different stuff on, how we handle certain calls. And then, for you, going back into your story here, you get that, you get that call, you get that win, and also in a situation that I would have kind of not really thought of. I don't think, but I say that, but I don't know. Like, you're in dispatch, you think on your feet, and that's the thing with us, and maybe you agree with this as well. Well, of course, because you actually did this too, that for us, we don't stop. Like, if we're going to help somebody, we're going to go 110% and beyond, and you did exactly that, and good job to you for that.
Thank you. Like you said, it's what we do. But it is, we do have. I think the resources are better now for
Mhm.
dispatchers. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
that there is more resources out there to be able to take care of some of these challenges that we face. And one of the things that's come into mind right off is just thinking about the resources. Is I had a group of we are, of course, in Kentucky, so we have a giant cave system. That's all we are, is a giant cave system. And they would be lots of people who like to go caving. It's not me, but some people like it. So we had a group that actually got trapped in a cave because of high waters. It had rained, so it made this little creek that they went across within the cave now a massive river. So they're stuck. And then we have a confined space rescue team at the time. So we went in and sent them in, and then they get stuck. So
Oh,
what do
what?
you do when your rescuers are stuck as well? So at the time, you're talking about a time when Google was barely coming out. So when you're able to finally just reach out to extra resources, they're everything that you can find now that it's got specialized training and networks of folks and stuff. So we was able to resolve it. We did have to call in a national team to get everyone out, as crazy as that may sound. But just the resources that are available now to the dispatchers. And I wonder how it would have been maybe if some of the technology that we have now was available. Would that have changed the outcome of some of the calls that I was involved in? Or even just 5 years ago, just if this technology had been around. And curious to see just how far it does go. It's an exciting time to be in dispatch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think along with that too, thinking back on some of the calls that I took, because not a lot of people understand this either. If you've got especially years ago when I was still in dispatch, we didn't have what there is now for locating people or even be able to, with what all of you do, with the live streaming and everything with prepared and such. But I remember taking phone calls that were open lines and you could tell something was going on, but it was a phone that didn't have service. All it could do was call 911 and you couldn't get a location. And then the phone hangs up and then you're left with that, wondering what happened. What what exactly was going on, or praying, please call back. And I can remember maybe a handful of them out of all of my years in dispatch where there wasn't a call back and there wasn't anything that we could do, even going to every single cell phone carrier, to see if they were the ones who had, service for this phone before. And then when you finally exhaust every single resource, you're just sitting there like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be something. And I feel like, kind of like you're saying as well, that the technology that there is now, even 5 years ago or further, when I was in dispatch still and everything, that technology would have also helped with the mental health and wellness, because I most likely wouldn't have been left with the, what if they don't call back? There's no location. How am I going to find them? Or, anything like that. I think it would help out a lot more with the mental health and wellness aspect of it.
Absolutely, it does. And the hang up calls, thinking about hang up calls, I love the technology. I
Mhm.
get it. I do think that it saves lives, but it's also made dispatchers very complacent when it comes to 911 hang up calls. It's just a pocket dial. It's just a pocket dial. And I would dare any of the listeners right now to just Google 911 hang up calls, because there is a ton of gone wrong stories.
Mm.
So
Yes.
I'm going to encourage all of the dispatchers, don't get complacent when it comes to 911 hang up calls, even with some assistive technology like we're doing now to try to relieve some of that from dispatchers, really, because it is problematic. It really is. Like I said, Google it. You don't have to go far till you found a tragic story. And even in my home state of Kentucky, there's litigation going on. And we all know, especially as in the director role at dispatch, the liability that comes with it. And all it takes is one dispatcher being covered up on calls and miss a hang up call and it go bad. So I just want to really encourage the listeners to just don't be complacent on the 911 hang up calls. They'll get you in a lot of trouble.
Agreed. When I was still in dispatch, every single hang up call, landline or cell, we were calling back and figuring out what was going on there and sending somebody out. And, even if it took a little while, for an officer to clear to get somebody over there, just in case. And I remember there were a couple that, the person who was taking the call, even though the caller was saying, "Oh no, everything is fine," you're listening to the background of that phone call. And I remember one of my coworkers saying, "Yeah, I think something else is going on there." And we sent somebody out. We had the information, and sure enough, there was something that was going on. But there's that I'm getting goosebumps right now talking about it, thinking about it. But there's those moments too when you are taking those calls that are hangups or open lines, and you're listening to everything in that background, and that moment that like it just it's an eerie feeling.
But it's our instinct, right? That's something
Right.
you need to develop with the skill. You do. I call it your dispatcher spidey sense. It just
Yes.
starts to went off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, and there are also, for those who are listening and everything, they're not all eerie. There are some funny ones. There are some things that happen. You know, it might sound like there's a couple fighting or whatever, and then the officer gets there, and it turns out they were just together, and it
Yeah.
wasn't fighting; they were wrestling.
They're wrestling.
I'll leave it at that. Yeah,
Wrestling.
they were wrestling.
Mhm.
I'll say one really quick. There was one call that I took, and it was two guys that were arguing, and I thought, oh man, I think these guys are like straight up fighting. And then what it was they were arguing because their video game disc, the game was called Halo. They couldn't get it to work, and they were mad about it. And I'm in my head laughing because of what they're saying, and I'm just saying, "Hello, hello, hello," and then I hang up, and or they hung up rather, and I hung up and then called back, and one of them picks up. And I said, "Hi, this is Ricardo with Allegan 911. I just got a phone call, cell hang up from you guys. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." And the guy immediately goes, "I didn't call you. I don't know how you got my number, but I didn't call you." And I said, "Okay, I just wanted to make sure you're fine." He goes, "Yeah, no, everything is fine here. Don't worry about it." And I said, "All right, well, can I just verify some information?" And luckily they did. And I said, "All right, well, I'll go ahead and let you go. But by the way, did you get Halo to work?" And he starts laughing and he goes, "Bro, this guy heard us." He goes, "He heard everything." And I said, "Well, again, I just wanted to make sure you were okay." They're like, "No, we're fine, man. Everything is fine." And I think an officer went out there later on just to double check, and everything was fine. And the game was fine as well.
Well, what we're seeing, even with hang-up calls, though,
Mhm.
even that's funny. A lot of people don't even answer the phone anymore, and really, if you don't recognize the number, most folks are not even answering the phone, or they're going to have that avoidance issue. They're going to pretend that if I don't answer the phone, they'll quit calling, and then dispatch is stuck.
Right.
Where one of the things that we can do is we can send a text out, just answer back. If all else fails, just send them a text. And what we see is most people will at least answer a text, even on my personal phone. I can text you back real quick where I may not have time for a phone call or to answer the phone. So that's one of
Right.
the things that we do that's kind of helped quite a bit for dispatch centers.
Yeah,
To
that
actually, I'll take no, sorry, pocket dial over I assumed every day. So
yeah, right, yeah, no, exactly. And that's the amazing part of the technology that's out there and all. I wanna back up really quick because there was a question that I wanted to ask you earlier. And just if you can touch on it briefly before we go into some of the other calls and everything that you took throughout your career and such. When you started out, you mentioned how that first year, and especially like training and everything, was a really difficult time. What was it exactly that you feel like kind of made it more difficult?
multitasking
Mhm,
is a real challenge, I think. It was for me anyway,
mhm.
just being able to multitask. Um, Going into an environment where everyone was tenured, that they were very experienced. There was no real new blood in there, which is not the case today. I'm finding out because the is anybody having a retention problem? Just saying. So it's not the same as it used to be.
Yeah.
But I think the multitasking was the hardest part for me. And I had come from a very I was good at EMS. I was good at what I was doing, and then to come in and then quickly be humbled was a blow to the ego, to say the least. That I didn't have it all figured out. But then you learn, and you have great mentors, and then you get over that threshold, I believe. So it wasn't natural, but I did have to come out of my EMS bubble and learn a few other pieces on the law enforcement side. And when I did that, then it was good.
Awesome. So you end up going through all of that. You've got those moments in the beginning that were difficult, and I was the same way, because when I first started out, it was just me for 8 hours, and I was running everything. When I leave from Central Florida back to Southwest Michigan, in the county that I grew up in, it's a different beast. It's a different dynamic completely, because there's a team now. And now I have to learn that team dynamic. Now I have to listen to everything going on the phone, not just the caller, but what's going on in the background. I'm typing everything out. I'm probably toning out on the radio at the same time. And I'm also listening on the other end of the room as they're putting it out over the air to the officers that are en route. And I'm learning how to use my, what I call, dispatch ear, where you're listening to every single thing that's going on. And I don't know about you, but for me, even being 10 years out of dispatch, I still have dispatch ear. I will be out at dinner with somebody, and they'll see me, and I'll like make a face or something, and they'll go, "Can you hear other conversations? Like, what's going on?" And I'll say, like, "Man, you won't believe what this person just did," or whatever, because you hear everything that's going on. Like, you can almost zone in on a conversation that's going on 2 tables away from you or whatever, and still be, talking with the person that's in front of you. I can't explain it, but it
And
happens.
I would even question how many of your listeners, when they're actually trying to sit and enjoy a movie at home on the couch, are they really just sitting and watching a movie, or are they doing something else at the same time? You know that you'd be playing on your phone at the same time while you've got the show going on TV, or you're doing something else. It seems like that we have a hard time just being in that place and just watching a television program, or we've got to be doing something else at the same time too. It
Yeah.
always was that for me. And that's what I find really across most of the folks that I talk to. So I'd be curious to see if you could just sit there and only watch TV. I don't think we can do it.
So how about you? Are you able to do it?
No. No. I'm a shopping on Amazon or doing something else when I'm got the TV going. And they'll be like, "You're not even watching it." Be like, "Yes, we know every word that they just said. Yes, we're watching it."
Yep, I'm the same way. I'll be sitting there, just the other day, my kids and I were, so, a lot of the game shows when I was growing up, they've brought them a lot of them back.
Mhm.
So Press Your Luck is one of those. And I'm sitting there watching with my kids, and we're getting all up in arms like, "No, don't go, pass it or whatever, no whammy," or whatever is going on. And then one of my daughters will look back and they'll say, "Dad, you're on your phone. You're not even paying attention." And I'll say, "Yeah, I am." And I'll tell them exactly what just happened. And they'll go, "I don't know how you did that. I'm trained."
We have a new life skill, don't we?
Right. Like that's how it happens. That's how it works. So and if you feel comfortable talking about this, one of the calls that kind of sticks with you, a lot of the people that I've spoken to on this podcast, they have several. There's a lot of different calls that stick with you, but sometimes there are maybe one or two that really are just there.
I think everybody has their call if they've been in it long enough. Um, and me, there's those calls I've took just really complex calls. I've taken calls where I couldn't be more proud of our field responders, with plane crashes and all of those type things. But for me, and I didn't even realize that this was my call until it was brought to my attention by a coworker.
Mhm.
And they're like, "This is the only time we've ever seen you rattled." ever. And they had mentioned this, several years later. And it is a story of helplessness, really. I think that that's what my trigger was. What it was is there was an eyewitness who watched a woman drive herself and her children into a lake, Lake Cumberland. And they was watching this. It was at a remote area in our jurisdiction. And as quick as I was, we've taken the questions. We've got an eyewitness on the bank that's seen this. I knew nothing that I could do would have someone there in time. It was just a remote location. If, it would have been bad enough if they'd been sitting on the bank watching it happen. But it didn't happen that way. So what had happened is she had, I think, a 6-year-old and an infant that she had in a car seat, and she drove them into the lake. Of course, she got herself out last minute, and the 6-year-old got herself out. And one of the things that made this particularly dynamic for me, other than the helplessness part, is I had 2 children at home about the same age, a daughter and a son. And I also had friends with Fish and Wildlife, with our conservation services, who manages the lakes, that responded. And he also had children the same age that we're good friends with, still to this day, some of our dearest friends. And as he interviewed the little girl, that she was sitting in an ambulance, warming up and stuff, and she wept because she didn't say Bubby. Because as she was saving herself coming out of this car, this 6-year-old little girl suffered because she was worried that she didn't get her little brother, couldn't get him out of the car seat, and him an infant and her just a tiny thing herself. So that really resonated with me, because not only did I have that helplessness that I couldn't get anyone there in time, and that, that they were the same age as my children and his children, and that we got to hear a little bit about the offset and some of the things that happened after they were out of the water and so forth. That was it. But I recognize exactly what it was. And it's the fact that I knew I couldn't there was, as much as I had done over my career, like I said, you can move mountains in dispatch. You just gotta get in there and do it. That I was absolutely helpless in that situation. Yeah, I knew I could get them there. We're going to get them there quick. We're going to do the protocols. We're going to do it, everything. And I knew in that moment it was not going to make a difference. So that was my hardest call. I like to say, it is. And there's been other calls, though, that have been challenging, murder, suicides, and train wrecks, and just all kinds of darkness that we deal with in our career. But that was the one that I think that, I still processed it. I still dispatched it well and that kind of stuff. But it bothered me. That was my call.
Wow. I think one of the things that makes a lot of these calls rather, really hard is when you have, like you were saying, you had 2 younger children that were, and we're empaths, right? So we're putting ourselves in, the caller's shoes, or anything else that is going on, to be able to relate and get this information, and also build that rapport with the caller, for that trust and everything, so that we can get them help as much as possible, or as fast as possible rather. And that, for myself as well, is one of the things where, when I had taken calls that had to do with children, I remember one time specifically coming home and hugging my son. He'd come up to me. He was, I think, maybe 4 or 5 at this time. He's 19 now, but I hugged him to the point where he goes, "Oh," like he winced, because I hugged him so tight, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I just remember telling him, I had a hard day at work. That's all. And I love you. And he said, "I love you too." And I think that's one of those reasons that makes this so hard. But also, did you know, was there anything that ever came out of why this mom did this? Because, sometimes that also ends up contributing to that not getting any closure. That
It was just,
why would this even happen?
mental illness.
Wow.
She was just having a psychotic episode. So, and I was actually, I had a dispatcher today tell me something that it's kind of resonated with me, and I'm going to share it.
Mhm.
But she described it as dispatchers take that raw data, really that emotion that's coming in from those callers, and converting it into useful information. It's just raw data that we're taking in and converting. And I thought that's just a great way of putting that. So
Agreed.
we
Yeah.
just make it usable.
Now, this incident was around 2006, correct?
Yep.
So there wasn't a lot of resources for us. There was also, and I mean, it's still the same way now in some places where dispatch is not involved in the debriefings. There's not a lot of support there. Um, so, kind of looking back at that call back in 2006, were there any debriefings? Like, was there anything that you were able to do, or that you were told, hey, maybe you should talk to somebody, or anything like that? If thinking back to it.
No, I don't believe so. They would have debriefings for the sheriff's office and police departments and stuff like we've heard. We've heard the stories, but the truth is, at the time, I didn't recognize it. I didn't know I needed to do debriefing. You rub some dirt on it and move on. So, of course, I was that old school mentality. You just moved on, and it wasn't until later years, and I know it's soft talk and soft skills, and that we talk about with the mental health, but it really does affect you. And I think that anyone who's been in this line very long is going to be. If you've been in it 10 years, it's going to affect you. So, but no, there was nothing that I participated. Now, times have changed. Kentucky has great programs. Most of the states across the country have different types of programs. Kentucky even does brings in mental health experts, and they do it like once a quarter. And I know people who have attended those sessions, and they say that they really are life-changing.
Mhm.
But no, never participated in anything like that. Even if it's available, I don't know that I would have, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because there's a lot of us who, and I'm sure there's a lot still now too, that think this way. But I know that when my crew and I had gone through a couple things, the first one we were like, no, we don't need that. We're fine. We'll push through.
Yeah.
And then the second time something had happened, we actually went and spoke to somebody. We were all in a room with this gentleman, and we told him what happened. And the first thing he says is, well, how does that make you feel? And we all looked at each other and we go, thank you for your time. Like, you're probably great at what you do, but you don't come from where we come from. And we just kind of left that room, and we dealt with it ourselves by talking with each other, and we were able to get through it that way. And I think in some places it's like that still. But like you said, times have changed. It's a new day. There's a lot more resources. People are talking about it finally. And it's getting out there, and it's resonating with people, and people don't feel alone anymore. So which is a very good thing. So you've gone through all of this time, right? You've got all of these different calls, all of this experience. How long were you in dispatch before you decided to make your transition out into being an industry partner?
Hmm. I was about 18 years in the dispatch center. I went on to teach at the police academy in Kentucky for about 3 to 4 years before actually retiring.
Mhm.
Which was great. I really enjoyed my time teaching as well, because I wanted to stay in it, but I needed to kind of relocate because my son was going to university and those type of things. So I took that position till retirement. And then I've been out for about 3 years, almost 3 years. I'd done a NCIC a warrants project for the state of Ohio, and then I joined Prepared. I was one of their first employees, couldn't be happier. And when they pitched me, when they told me what they was doing, I was like, and what, and who, and tell me more about this. Cause I was intrigued at that point, because nothing had really even come into our industry that had anything to do with what we're doing now. And I was like, yeah, I can get behind that. So, I left the position and just like, let's go do this. Yeah, this is going to make a difference. So, I'm encouraged. I'm inspired by our team, really just a genius group of, young individuals that are out here killing it every day. And they're not stuck in that same convention that me thinking how something was supposed to look, being in it. They can come in and with fresh eyes and just do it in a way that I could have never even imagined. So it's a good time.
Oh, that's awesome. I can hear it in your voice and see it in your face that you're just loving this
Yeah.
and what you're doing, but also, what the company stands for and everything. So for those who are watching and listening who might not know,
Mhm.
who is prepared? What all do you do? And how are you helping those not only in the community, especially those within the trenches of 911?
Oh, well, Prepared is really an assistive technology company for dispatchers and public safety. And we're in a few other verticals, but we really let the dispatch centers do more with less. That's what we do. One of the big things that we were kind of pioneers for and known from was live streaming. So what I like to say is I could literally FaceTime my son in Poland or my daughter that was in Japan, but dispatch centers couldn't see what was happening across the street. So that takes it into a whole nother level when it comes to mental health, being able to see what's actually happening. And I'm glad that we've talked a little bit about it because there's already been white papers published. There's drilling down on the whole video to 911, and it's actually been shown to be stress reducing. So if we can retain our dispatchers because we're able to bring down that stress level with, picturing events worse than they are, getting that closure, a lot of different aspects that it hits. It's if we're able to retain our dispatchers, I'll take that every day because then you do get that dispatcher spidey sense because you've taken a call like that before and they're not out the door before they get off of their training sessions. Another thing that we do is we do text to 911. Which, it was the big bad wolf. We was all scared of text to 911, and it is very much here. We also do some assistive technology pieces. So we can let the dispatchers know if there is a gun call on the floor, if there's something that says a weapon or if there's child abuse. We've got some different pieces like that where we are able to help dispatch centers really just process all this information that's coming in. I would say most people either have 2 giant screens or up to 8 screens that they're trying to monitor, not counting the closed circuit TV in the corner of the room or the CNN, or you got the weather channel on and they're expecting you to be monitoring all of this information, and don't dare miss any of it, right? Because it's coming in, you're supposed to see all of it. And one of the things we do is we just help dispatchers process, especially with the staffing levels that we have right now. We're trying to tackle that some and let you do more with what you have, to put it basic.
That's amazing. And I love the whole aspect of that as well. Thinking about everything that you do, everything that the company stands for and all of that. For anyone who has any questions, or not just questions, but maybe on the fence for using a technology like this, what is something that you would want those in public safety to know?
First, it's going to save lives, period. We've seen it. This technology, even if you're just talking about TCPR, it puts hands on chest. It's already been shown 65% quicker if you have live streaming going. Okay. We've had, I don't know how many save stories. It's great for fires because dispatch, that people are really bad at calling in a fire. They'll tell you it's 10 acres and it's a ditch line, or, they're always off on their fires. It's great for law enforcement because you can see and really have great situational awareness of what's happening on that scene. And I know if you're in dispatch, you've heard the officers or field responders say that call is nothing like what dispatch told me. That call is nothing like what dispatch told me. And it's not dispatch's fault. You're asking the questions. You're relaying what you were told. Well, what if you can see it? And you'd be like, no, that's not that I'm seeing here. What's going on? So it does bring more information in-house. It lets you actually see what's happening. So it's saving lives, and it's really going to just change the industry. You wait. But that's a little bit about some of the stuff that we do.
Love it. I love it. And the fact that, I'm seeing a lot more folks use this, technology, and just the stories that are coming out and everything. I'm obviously fascinated by stories, and these are the things, again, that I love to see and hear, because it involves the profession that I also love. And if it helps, again, not just the public, but especially those within the trenches of 911, I'm all about it. And I want to continue to hearing more and have people, experience it as well.
Well, it's fascinating because we try to keep up with a lot of the safe stories. Some of them we'll share with our team. Hey, we had this, we had that. And we put them on our blog post on our
Mhm.
website with the prepared911.com. There's a blog post with a lot of the safe stories. But what I see more than anything is typical for our profession. I'll be at a conference and I'll run into somebody and they'll be like, we used it the other day and it was great. It done this. And be like, that's awesome. Why didn't you share that? That's part of the job. They don't even think about, the pats on their back for themselves.
True. Yep.
They can share all of this great work that they're doing and that they're being innovative. I've seen folks really use our technology in ways that it was never intended. And I'm like, I try to think outside of the box, but sometimes it's just genius use cases. And I'm like, you need to tell us about that so we can share. But again, it's typical for the dispatchers to not necessarily want to put themselves out there or even consider they've done a great job on something.
It happens all the time. I mean, we've said it numerous times where it's like, that was just doing my job. But these are the wins and the best things, and the fact that you have people coming up, especially in conferences or whichever, if you're in the booth and someone mentions, and then you tell them, well, you should have told us. And hopefully a lot more people, especially after listening to this episode, will end up sending you more of those stories as well. And just continue to see how everything is progressing, how it is changing the landscape of this profession and how people see it as well.
Well, there's a lot in our company that's come from the public safety space. There's also great computer engineers that didn't. So when they get to hear those stories of how their work on the back end is really affecting folks out there and how it actually saving lives, it's huge for them. So, yes, if you're prepared, if you're interested in being prepared, let us know, share the stories. I'm telling you, it's usually within 60 days that there is a major save event after it's rolled down into a dispatch center and they're like, yeah, we had a save. And then you see it on the news story. So we try to share all those on our sites. People are welcome to come and dig around on those all you want. Contact those agencies. It's a lot of fun. They're
perfect.
Great folks.
Oh, I love it. And I can't wait to hear more about it. So as we go into the wrap up of this episode, there's a lot more that we're going to have to do another episode because there are several stories that I want to cover with you, some that you sent to me. And so we're going to have to get together for some more of those on a different episode. But as we go into the wrap up of this one, which has been awesome to have you on here. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing stories, but also sharing what you do with Prepared, but also what Prepared does for those in 911. So thank you for that. How can people find out, first of all, how can people find out more about Prepared and everything that you all do?
Sure. We have a website. It's prepared911.com. Feel free to reach out, poke around, read the blogs, read testimonials from other dispatch centers. We're in almost 1,000 dispatch centers, I think, now across the country, and major cities, smaller cities. You don't have to be huge. You can be any size. We're happy to be a part of just the change that's coming in the industry. And they can even reach out to me, and you're welcome to share my information if you want to. It's just Sondra Wesley. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to hit me up on it if you would like to as well. Or my email address is just Sondra, and that's with an O, Sondra at prepared911.com. Feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions, talk policy with you, share just what I've learned over the last 2 years of really just going across the country, working with centers across the country, and just best practices.
All right. Excellent. Now, final question of this episode. And the question is, if you could go back, with all of the information that you have, your experience and everything, if you could go back in time to talk to yourself in the beginning of your dispatch career, what is some advice you would give yourself?
Oh my, that's okay. Don't make it tough on anybody. Let's see. Advice for myself. Shift work was hard. But I enjoyed it. I worked about 16 years of 12-hour night shifts, so I enjoyed the night work. Be patient with yourself. Take time for yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't drink the 32-ounce Mountain Dew every shift. And the 1,200 calorie burger from Hardee's. Be a little kinder to yourself. That's, I guess, it. This too shall pass, and that's even with the good and the bad. There'll be shifts that happen in dispatch that you won't foresee coming, even with personnel. And that's about it. I guess we're pretty hard on ourselves, I think, with being this personality type to even go into this line of work. So if you can be just kind of kind to yourself, kind to each other, maybe call somebody out in private and just say, "Are you good?" And they're going to say they are, they are, but you can offer up some help anyway. Be like, "Well, if you need something," and it goes a long way.
Perfect. Amazing. Again, thank you so much for being on. And this has just been an honor and a pleasure. I could talk to you all day, but I know you got to I know you have stuff you have to get to. And we're definitely going to have to do another episode and cover some of the other things. But thank you so much for being on.
Of course. I look forward to seeing y'all on the conferences.
All right. So I'll be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments or questions, this has been such a good episode. If you have any comments or questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on social media. You can become a supporter of the podcast. All of that you can simply do by going to links.co/WTT podcast. And that's links with 2 I's.co/WTT podcast. You'll find everything on there. My email, social media, where to follow, the latest episode, where to purchase, Imagine Listening, the book, as well as pre-order book 2. It's also on Audible. I had the honor and pleasure of voicing the book, so that was a lot of fun. Make sure to check that out as well. And then you can also check out the dispatch merchandise that I have, also podcast merchandise that is on there. Once again, that is links with 2 I's.co/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook as well as YouTube, X, and LinkedIn Live. And then you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you in the next one.